how do I merit the doctor in front of my name when your first inductee has a much more eminent doctorate than me? I'm not sure of that, but I'm honored and humbled. I want to, first of all, recognize a few people in the audience. Three of my former players at Winthrop are here. Four of them. They're all seated together at this table. They include Denny Saverance, who was the captain of the first team, a local guy. And then two Yankees, Randy Allmendinger and Bob Masella, and a Floridian, Bob Bowen. All were outstanding players, and the two Bobs, each of them were NAIA All-Americans, something that certainly I'm proud of, and they have every reason to be proud of. And then there's my daughter, Natasha, her husband, Mike. She endured countless times when Dad should have been present and wasn't. Soccer doesn't normally have cheerleaders, but she had a cheerleading outfit that her grandmother had made, and she wore to every home match. So I have done my due diligence in thanking folks other than you guys, and this organization is something that is meaningful, and I congratulate each of you and encourage you to continue along this path, because soccer has become, in the course of my lifetime, gone from a place of virtual non-existence to great prominence in York County, and this group recognizes as much. Now we'll get down to the reality of things. Standing before you is quite possibly the least likely candidate for induction into a Soccer Hall of Fame imaginable. As was mentioned, I grew up in Bryson City, North Carolina, right in the heart of the Smokies. And I am a genuine, bona fide hillbilly of the first magnitude. If you don't know where Bryson City is, it's back of beyond. And I never knew what a soccer ball was until I went to college. But I'm not your run-of-the-mill hillbilly that many of you are familiar with. I'm not the Al Cap, Little Abner cartoon strip, or the Beverly Hillbillies, or the Dukes of Hazzard. I'm a real hillbilly. If you look at the small print at the bottom of my birth certificate, it will say certified hillbilly. And at the time I grew up, hillbillies did not become soccer players. I went off to King College, not knowing what the sport was, but there came the first of many serendipitous blessings in the course of a life where soccer has meant a great deal. I was walking back from the golf course adjacent to the school after playing a round of golf my freshman year, and the soccer team was having spring practice. And they were planning a scrimmage and only had 21 people. The coach, who really wasn't a coach, as we'll see in a minute, he was more of an overseer, but he knew me, he was a professor, and he said, in essence, he didn't call it a warm body, but that's what he wanted, a warm body, a 22nd spot to fill in. And I had had about 6 weeks of soccer and freshman PE, so I knew the basics barely. But anyway, I filled in, and as fate would have it, I toe-poked a goal in the course of the scrimmage, and also managed to offend one of the English players on the team in the worst sort of way. I guess I can say what he said, "You're a bloody, brutal bastard," is what he said, because I had thumped him thoroughly in the shin. Well, it was a 50-50 ball, and I didn't know any better. I never did learn it. But anyway, the coach encouraged me to try out for the team, and I did. And from the outset, I actually had two basic skills, and that's probably about all I ever had in all the years I played. I was good in the air because, well, first of all, you're looking at a globe sitting atop a pair of shoulders that wears a 7 7/8 size cap. And if you know anything, and you men do, about hat sizes, that's overly large. Now, don't think for a minute that there is filled up space in there. There was a lot of empty space, and that's why I was so good in the air, because I was fearless. I didn't know any better. And if you got up close, you would see there are plenty of scars through my eyebrows to attest to that fact. But I was good in the air. The other skill I had from early on came from the fact that several of the players on that team were Hungarians. They had fled the 1956 revolution, come to this country, and they were the real coaches of the team. And I asked these guys earlier, they didn't know the answer, but I think a group quiz, one question, wouldn't be amiss. Who is the greatest international top-level world goal scorer of all time? Rich, you know? Wrong. I'm delighted you missed it. It was a Hungarian. Does that help anyone? No. Say it again. Maybe it is. Maybe. Yes, yes. Thank you. Ferenc Puskás. And he scored right at 800 goals in 817 international or top-level pro matches, which is absolutely amazing. But one of the things he was noted for was the other skill that I had early on. He was a short, stocky, squat guy who was absolutely a wizard with a butt trap. And if you don't know what a butt trap, these guys know because I demonstrated it. And if you look at my posterior, I have the qualification for being well endowed in that regard. Now, there are no lights following me along the road saying wide load or anything, but I had a wide load, and when a long ball in the air came, I could sit down on it and deaden it far better than most people can fit because you've got more space there. And that came from those Hungarians. Well, I played at King, and the heart of the team was three guys who had fled in the 1956 revolution. That, in turn, led to a love of the sport and my first job. I was hired as a teacher, but also to start a soccer program at a military academy in Virginia, and it was really the soccer rather than the teaching that got me the job. I taught for 3 years, married, was ready to go to graduate school, figured that in all likelihood, anything I would ever have to do with soccer was over. But by serendipity, again, I did my graduate work, my doctorate at Vanderbilt University, and there was a semi-professional team there, the Nashville Internationals. I became a member of that team, and the heart of that team, once more, was refugees from the 1956 Hungarian Revolution. Some of them became lifelong friends, and one of them had been on the under-19 national Hungarian team. So these were guys with appreciable levels of skill. Left Vanderbilt, came to Winthrop, and for sure, anything I would have to do with soccer must have been over then, only to meet Ian Davidson, an inaugural member of this Hall of Fame. Ian had the uncanny ability to get you to do anything, no matter whether you wanted to do it or not. He was the ultimate diplomat, the ultimate arm twister. And so he had a bunch of kids, Rad being one, and he's Joey to me, he's Joe to everybody in here, but I still remember his Joey when he was a little thicker in the hackle and sparser in the waistline. than he is now. But they had a field that Ian Davidson created over at Christopher Circle where they played. And Ian inveigled me into it. And the first thing you know, we had a men's team in Rock Hill. I was the player coach. We went to the high schools, to the York County system, convinced them to start soccer. And it all grew from a 100 by 50 yard field at Christopher Circle, where the goals were made out of railroad ties and the nets were made out of old tennis net material, and a bunch of kids playing, to what you see today. And I have been genuinely privileged to see it all, to see that kind of transition. And then, once more, fate intervened, because when I came to Winthrop, it was the South Carolina College for Women. There were no males. School got into big trouble in terms of student enrollment, realized they were going to have males, and began it. And of course, the next step was to have some kind of sports teams, and I was a warm body with a background in soccer. And I've told Rich this, maybe not in specifics, but I'll share with you. I coached for 12 years while teaching a full-time 12-hour load, trying to be a scholar as well, and trying to be a writer, which is what I do today. I'm a full-time writer, and somehow managed to bundle it all together and be a dad and a husband. And I made, at my highest paying level, Rich, and you now know you were blessed whether you knew it before or not, my top salary as a soccer coach at Winthrop was $6,500. Not exactly enriching. Obviously, I didn't do it for the money. I did it for the love of the sport. And while doing that, I was refereeing. I was the organizational person for high school soccer matches and refs in this area. I was a national level referee. It was NISOA then. I have no idea what it is today. Did regional college matches, ACC matches. I don't know when I found time to have a life. But for 12 years, enjoyed those wonderful autumn days in the sun, moved on. But the soccer didn't move on. I continued to referee up to the point where I was always the middle official because I was more experienced. And when I reached the point that the recovery time was 3 days, after every match I officiated, the message was quite clear. It was time to hang it up. So somewhere in my late 40s, I hung it up. But what the sport did was give me a lifetime of wonder in terms of interaction with others. And when I look at what the sport has become in this community today, I view it with awe. I also am deeply moved every time I realize how close the guys that I coached at Winthrop not only were, but remain. All these long years, the better part of 40 years after I was coaching, they get together once or twice a year, not one or two of them, 30 or 40 or 50. And there is a sense of fraternity and brotherhood there that is deeply moving. And the same was true for those Hungarian guys. And I look back on them in a true sense of wonder, because here were teenagers that left their country in the 1956 revolution with the takeover, the communist takeover. Kids with nothing. Most of them didn't even speak English. Came to this country, made a new life for themselves, succeeded, were wonderful people, and even today, some of my favorite foods are Hungarian. That's how much exposure I had to them. And the other, and it's, well, maybe on the edge of crude, but I'm going to do it anyway. At my age, you can say what you want to. My best friend among those Hungarians that I played semi-professionally with was a little guy named Laszlo, who was 5'2". He married a woman who was 6'3". And my enduring vision of them is and always will be slow dancing with him nestled at her bosom. Because that is about the comparable size that the two of them had. Soccer has been an integral and wonderful and deeply meaningful part of my life, a moving part. I remain in love with the sport to this day, and it runs like a bright, sparkling thread through the entire fabric of my life. Long ago, pretty obviously I'm not uncomfortable with a mic. I can talk the ears off a Georgia mule. But I learned long ago there's three things you do as speaker. You stand up, you speak up, and you shut up. Thank you.